Hi, how's it going? Welcome to this week's video of Down with Disability. Videos where we dive into the highs and lows of living with a disability and together find our way to the center of the two extremes. My name is Miguel, and today, because I just turned 26, so I'm officially old, I thought that we'd do something a little bit different, and I'm going to talk about the top 10 things that I've learned or have been more prominent lessons in my life over these past 25 years. These pieces of advice aren't in any particular order of importance because I think they have all been important at some stage in my life, so hopefully one or two things will resonate with your particular situation. The first one is being willing to accept help. And for me, this one was extremely hard for me to do, and it still is sometimes. Just yesterday, one of my friends was offering to help me carry a glass of, wine. I'm just gonna be honest. And she offered to carry it, right? And she waited for 2 seconds. And then she automatically said, "You know what, I'm just gonna carry it." Because she knew that my automatic response would have been, "No, I got it, it's fine." And we all know how I like to spill. So yeah, she just kind of took charge and carried it for me without me having to reject her help first. Tip number 2 is that there's always a way to get things done. And for me, this has been especially important when it comes to a physical environment. So maybe going up a staircase, right? There's times that there's no railing. So what do? You go up using the wall. Or if there's no wall near, then you crawl up, you sit on one step, lift yourself up, and then you just get to the top. You have to find ways that work for you and with your particular disability, but there's always a way. Tip number 3 is that living with a disability gets better over time, but not necessarily easier. And by that I mean that, like with example number 2, right? Over time you learn to accommodate to yourself and to your disability, so or cope with would be a better word. So you start finding ways of getting things done and of living your life. But as you progress and as you get older, there's different obstacles that come up. For example, for me it's been like more pain as I get older, or like stiffness in my muscles that I didn't experience before. So this brings me to tip number 4, which is that acceptance is ongoing. And this is something that is hard to accept when you realize it, because you get to a point, right? You're living your life and you're like, yes, I'm comfortable with who I am. I'm comfortable with having this disability and having it be a part of me. And then there's days that you're just like, that everything goes wrong, or that you can't do something, that somebody is rude, and all of a sudden these like thoughts start creeping into your head that you can't do things, that you're worthless, that why do you even try? So those type of things, right? And with each new experience, new situation that you go through, these thoughts they almost recycle and just keep coming back, right? So it's something that you have to continually remind yourself and work through. But the good news is that the more you do, the stronger you become and the more confident you become. The next tip is that you never escape the label. And by that I mean the disability label, right? And for the longest time, I thought that that was a bad thing, right? We get into this mindset of being like, no, I'm gonna prove people wrong, that, even with my disability, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna be this, right? And then you accomplish that goal, and all of a sudden you're like the graphic designer with a disability, or this with a disability, right? You could be an astronaut with a disability, right? So you're never really away from the label. And I guess my perspective has changed a little bit, because I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, alright? The disability is a part of you, a part of us, a part of who I am, right? It's something that even though it sucks at times, it's something that I'm proud of. It gives me a new perspective in life. So yeah, I'll be a person with a disability. I'll be a graphic designer with a disability and still do really high quality work and, you know, do the best in all the projects that I'm in, right? My disability doesn't hinder me. Tip number 6 is that we have to be willing to deal with our problems head on. And by that I mean not pretending that they don't exist, not pretending that we don't have limitations. For me, this was especially hard when I was younger, because I really wanted to be able to, like I mentioned in previous videos, run around or play sports, right? So I would say, yes, I'm gonna try to keep up the best I can, and then when I couldn't, I would be like, oh, like, this sucks, like, you're worthless. This is things that I would, like, tell myself, right? Like, why can't you run? Or, like, I would have very intense conversations with my leg. I would be like, stupid leg. Things like that. We have to be, I guess, aware enough to know that, yes, there's gonna be things that we can't do, and we have to be okay with it. The next tip is kind of a remedy, in that it's not being afraid to put yourself out of your comfort zone. So in the previous example, right, playing sports, there's adaptive sports that you can do, or other ways to exert yourself, I don't know, something along those lines. For me, that was a big part of it, right, physical. But another huge part of it was also just interacting with people, because there's always the fear of not knowing how people are gonna react to your disability, or up to you, like, are they gonna look down on you, or are they gonna treat you with respect, right? So there's always that. Tip number 8 is that you have to want it, and by that I mean you have to want to improve. You have to want to make something out of yourself and out of your life. You can't use your disability as an excuse. And this applied to me especially with physical therapy. I did not put as much effort as I should have, and for the most part I half-assed it. It didn't matter how much my parents told me, or my friends told me, or my doctors told me that it would do me good. Because I didn't want it myself, it just didn't matter, right? And I see this a lot. Sometimes people don't see the light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to their disability, so they just kind of throw themselves to the ground and let life happen and don't really care. And that's just not a good way to live. Tip number 9 is being self-aware. And I talk a lot about that in this channel, but it's mostly centered around being self-aware internally. For this, I want to touch on being self-aware of what you project externally. And this was actually brought up by a recent experience of me being in Mexico, right? It's not as accessible as the US, so it's harder for people with disabilities to get around. And that was very frustrating for me, because I constantly needed help, and my attitude honestly was poor sometimes. We went to the basilica, and again, I was disappointed when I didn't I was so excited, you know, to see, because of the importance of it that it has for me, the location. And when I got there and I saw that it wasn't accessible, it was just not, it was disheartening, I think, because even though they, for example, even though they had ramps, they were very not, they were like, basically like this, the angle of the ramp was so steep, and there was people even like with strollers with their kids, like they would be like slipping down the ramp. And in my head I was like, how in the world would a person with a disability or a person using a wheelchair, how are they gonna get through this ramp? So that was very upsetting for me. So it upset me, but in turn I didn't take into account how my poor attitude affected the people around me. So yeah, be self-aware, because it can be hard sometimes, not just on you, but people around you. The last thing is that giving up is not an option. And I know this can be hard depending on what your situation is or what your current mindset may be, but we can't let the feelings of not being able to do something or feeling like we don't belong or that there's not a place for us in this world or society, we can't let those feelings overtake us. Life is so beautiful and there's so much more to live for despite our disability. In my case with CP, I fall a lot. Can you imagine if I just refused to get up? If every time I fell, I just laid on the ground until somebody finally came to pick me up, or, that would be ridiculous. No one would do that. We have to get up every time we fall, figuratively and literally. But I think that's where I want to end this video. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to give it a big like and share it with someone who will enjoy it or might benefit from hearing this message. Like always, I hope you have a great rest of your day, a rest of your week, and I'll see you on the next one.